Hey there, we're going to do a cheap versus expensive. So looking here, we've got two frame lock flipper knives. This one here is made by Rook and costs $40. This one is made by Zero Tolerance and costs $220. I'm going to get into whether this knife is better than this knife and whether it's better than this knife by a degree of 5 times better, and just talk about what you get these days when you do spend this bit of extra cash and what you can get at this lower price point. And it has changed a lot in the last few years. Let's get into it. Alright, so this is the Rook 108 SF. It's a flipper knife. Now, these two, they're different sizes. I'll just get that out of the way first. I'm not comparing these two, how they perform as knives, particularly in terms of versing each other, because the Zero Tolerance is a little bit smaller. It's about an inch smaller. But as you can see, they're sort of very much of the same design language. This one has merely got the sort of an inch extra on the blade and sort of a half inch extra on the blade and a half inch extra on the handle, making it like a little bit of a next size up knife. Anyway, not super important in the video I'm talking about today. What I'm going to get into today is what this Rook does that a few years ago the budget knives really didn't do. So the thing is, a flipper knife used to be something that you would have to pay good money to get cranking. In fact, recently, until very recently, the only flipper knives you could really get under $50, $60 were speed-safe assisted knives. That's changed. Now you're getting knives made from companies like Rook and Real Steel that fly out with just the same amount of authority as your higher priced knives. So really, the flipping action is something that you're not really paying. You know, this flipping action isn't 5 times better than this flipping action. It's marginally better, it is. It really does shoot out, and it feels a bit more slick, but in terms of actual use, which, you know, us knife people get bogged down a lot in the minutiae when it comes to actually getting the knife out of your pocket and sort of almost subconsciously just opening it, cutting something, putting it back and using it, it's really not going to be much difference at all between the two of them in terms of flipping action. So that's kind of the main frame lock flipper thing. How do the lockups look compared to each other? Well, to be honest, they look about as good as the other one. So this is where you're starting to get into the fit and finish side of things as well. So again, in the last few years, the fit and finish, from certain companies especially, has really turned up the juice on, you know, the more expensive stuff. So this knife here is pretty well meticulously made. It is very well machined. It's got details which are symmetrical. It's even got extra mechanical doodads such as this. Everything is squared off, and when you close the knife you'll see that it is very nicely centered. It's got a back spacer which is nicely ground. It's got complexity as well as being very well put together. Really painstakingly going over the two. You will notice some slight, you know, differences between what Zero Tolerance have been able to do with their money and their expertise versus what this company, which is probably spitting out a lot more knives, is able to do. And the closest I can tell is around this pivot here. There's a little bit more dark shadowy than this side here. So it might be a little tiny bit off center or something, just the shape of it. And you know what? That's it. When I compare these two knives, top to tail, fit and finish is really something that has caught up. So we've caught up on action, we've caught up on lockup and fit and finish and that sort of thing. What is left? Well, it's really coming down to design, country of origin, and materials. And those three things, I guess, you're going to start perhaps seeing these guys pull away a little bit more from these guys. But really, are they pulling away that much? So the design of this one, it's technically it's unique. There isn't another knife that's exactly the same as this, but it is falling in line with the designers. Like it's tapping into the market of what's popular at the moment. It's walking the paths that are forged by designers like Dmitry Sinkovich, who designed this one, and it's just kind of doing that in a vaguely different way, you know, with a slightly different blade shape, but not an original piece. There's some Reich knives that look like this that are made by designers, and again, it's definitely got the vibe going on here. So if you're going to be wanting to break new ground design-wise, you're not going to break that ground with knives from companies like Rook and Real Steel, so to speak. I mean, Real Steel apparently have a guy called Liang Gang designing their knives, but Try and find a picture of him for me. Find him on try and find him on LinkedIn. You know, I don't know. It's tenuous at best. So really, in terms of design, you are going to be breaking the new ground, getting the new stuff year by year from companies like Zero Tolerance and not companies from Rook. So that is some place where you're going to get your higher cost is going to start paying off in terms of having something unique or at least very, very new. Second, country of origin. So this one is made in the USA and this one is made in China. So people in the USA have better wages, they expect more. They've got unionism. I understand companies have to pay, so they pay your health insurance over there. I don't know how it works. It's more expensive to pay and employ people in the USA than it is to pay and employ people in China. That's because China until recently was a third world country, really, in terms of the grand scheme of things. It's still not as in, up there with the first world, really, in terms of living conditions for every citizen. Not that we're doing everything perfectly in the West either, but I'm digressing massively. You can pay people less to make a knife in China than you can pay them to make a knife in America. That's just the fact. So you pay a bit of a premium for having this made by American people in an American factory using American materials. The materials in this are from all over, I'd imagine. The titanium is probably just from China. The steel is Sandvik steel, so I guess that's steel from, is it Sweden, I think? But yeah, the country of origin is definitely going to be something you're paying a bit more for. Is that worth it to you? You know, to me, I can get a bit of especially if it's made in Australia, I would probably pay a fair bit extra. That's just because, you want to support your own team, don't you? So that is something it's tangible, but in my opinion, not essential. So third thing that these guys are still winning these guys on, and probably the biggest thing, and probably what this all comes down to, is materials. So a knife here made of titanium and S35VN has a lot more benefits versus a knife made of stainless steel and 14C28N, as good a steel as that is. And it is a good steel, especially for the low price of $40. When you make a knife of titanium, it's going to weigh a lot less. It's going to be it's going to be nice and anodizable, and it's going to have a sort of fancy machining and all sorts of get a nice snail trail finish. Titanium's a nicer material to have in hand and also to look at and to operate as well. So titanium frame locks, they are, apart from the strike face here, they are much nicer and sort of softer to use, to unspring and spring. Stainless steel is a tougher material, or not a tougher material, that's completely wrong. It's a harder material, so it's going to sort of just be a little bit more stress and pressure involved. So that's one thing, but it's mainly going to be the weight that comes down to it with titanium. Let's see the weights compared on these two. Keeping in mind the different knives, so the Rook is a 120 gram knife and the ZT is a 87 gram knife. So I guess a little bit extra, you're probably going to add another 10 grams, bring it out to that length. Bring it out to this length. So you're going to get marginal lightness from the titanium, whilst maintaining the same. You can have about as thick as the ZT as well. You could have it as thick as each other, and the titanium is going to weigh about 30% less. That's a very long way of saying a very simple point. So that's the good thing about titanium, and of course the blade steel is going to be the thing that I guess clinches it for a lot of real knife guys, because we like to know that we've got good steel. It's a bit like how you in your car, you usually just drive the speed limit, and you drive, what's the speed limit in America, 45 miles an hour. So you kind of have to drive over at 45, don't you? But isn't it nice to know you've got an engine onto your car that if you really wanted to, you could get it to 90 really, really quickly? It's kind of like that. It's, really, you're going to use these knives a few times a day tops, and really sharpening is never going to be a massive hassle unless you're using it as a work knife and properly using it repeatedly for hours and hours on end, day by day. Which again, I guess having a super steel probably does make it more likely for you using a knife as that. But in terms of EDC, really, it's more knowing that it's there rather than actually fulfilling its full potential. But steel is a big deal to most people, myself included. I'm a bit shallow like that, and I do like to know I've got a fancy steel in my knife. It's true, it's a shameful, and it shouldn't be the case, but if a knife has ZDP in it, it's more likely to stay in my collection than a knife that's got VG10 in it, and that's just how I am. And I think that's how a lot of you are too. So really, that's it. Is this knife worth 5 times as much in terms of actual use than this knife? what is it? The prestige of having a zero tolerance versus some fairly, random no-name brand. It's a division of a torch company. I don't know. I mean, even speaking of which, both these knives are coming in nice boxes and everything now. It really is stiff competition. But for me, it's that curve of diminishing returns, isn't it? I do, because I'm a knife nerd, I do notice the slightly smoother action. Because it's me, I play with it a lot, and I do like the idea that it's as if an original design and not kind of like a phone-in or like an inspiration sort of thing. And I do like that it's made in America. I guess I like to support the American companies and stuff. I don't even know why, just because, I guess. I like that it's got S35 VN steel, and I know it's going to hold its edge about twice as long as far as my testing goes to the 14C28N, maybe even longer. I've only tested S35 VN once, and it was on a zero tolerance, and it was frankly a bit soft. I'm hoping when I test it on this one, it'll show that 0909 that I had, and I'll link the video at the top, was just a fluke. And I'm hoping this gets to about 190 to 200 cuts. Anyway, I'm digressing once again. So the steel, and the materials, it is a bit of a win for me as well. But it's closing fast, this gap between cheap and expensive with your frame lock flippers. The days of needing speed safe and all that sort of stuff just to get the smooth action, they're gone. Companies that still are needing to do that need to move up their machining game, because Rook and Real Steel, and I'm sure some others are doing it with simple, bearing wheels and, even some phosphor bronze washers and just nice machining standards. And it's really, it's narrowing the gap between these two. You're always going to pay a bit more for the original designs, which is something I'm also keen on. Like, I like having, this is the Sinkovich zero tolerance. That's kind of cool to me. You're just paying a bit more for cool. Actually, you're paying a lot more for cool, and I guess it's whether you're okay with that you keep paying more for cool, or you just go with pure utility, sharpen it a couple times more, and overall enjoy a knife that flips 90% as good, is built 95% as good, and just weighs a little bit more than this knife here. What do you guys think? How much is it? How much is this weighing up to you? Do you find this exorbitant for the small benefits you get over this, or do you feel like me and you sort of just because you're into the hobby and because you like having this knife made by this company with these materials, it's worth that extra triple digits often? Just a point of interest, a point of conversation. And thanks very much for watching, and I certainly am interested to hear your feedback. I'll see you in the next video, dudes. Bye.